Alright, so in this video we're going to learn how to factor trinomials in the form ax squared plus bx plus c. Now since you're here, if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and click that subscribe button and also go ahead and click that bell so you can be notified whenever I post a new video. So go ahead and do that, alright? And so let's get into this lesson. We're going to factor using the AC method, alright? Now there are a few ways that you could factor trinomials in the form ax squared plus bx plus c, where you have a term in front of your x squared. In this video, I'm going to show you the AC method. There's also a method called the slip and slide method and also the big X method. But in this video, we're going to focus on the AC method. So the AC method, we call it the AC method because our first step is to multiply a times c. Alright, so we multiply our coefficient of x squared and our constant. So that's our first step. Then we find two factors of AC, or the result, that have a sum of b. Alright, so sum of b. Replace those factors with b. At this point, you're going to have four terms. And your last step is to factor by grouping. So basically, you're going to group off your first set of terms, your last set of terms, and factor each binomial separately. All right. Seems a little more complicated than what it is, but when I show you, I think you'll understand it just a little better. All right. So let's get started. All right. So my first step is to multiply a times c. So my a is 2 and my c is 3. And that was going to give me 6. Just drawing a little t-chart. All right. I want to find factors of 6 that have a sum of 5. This is an easy one. 1 times 6 doesn't work because you get 7 when you add it. But 2 times 3, when you multiply it, it gives you 6. But when you add it, it does in fact give you 5. So our factors are 2 and 3 that we're going to use. All right. What are we going to do with that 2 and 3? We're going to replace that 2 and 3 with b. So I bring down my x squared term, or my first term. Instead of putting 5x, I'm going to replace it with 2x plus 3x. And then I bring down my last terms and my first term as well. All right. So the result, or what the factors that you have in the middle, should equal the original b. I could flip these. I could put the 3 first and the 2 second. It does not matter because you're going to actually get the same answer. All right. Make sure that you have your variable behind your new factors, because again, it should give you that result. All right. So we've replaced our factors, and now we're just going to factor by grouping, meaning I'm going to just group my first set of terms and my last set of terms and factor each one separately. So I have a 2x squared plus 2x. The greatest common factor is 2x. 2x squared divided by 2x is just x. So I took away one of those x's there. 2x divided by 2x is just 1. All right. Here, the greatest common factor is 3. So I factor out the 3. 3x divided by 3. 3's cancel out. I'm left with x. And of course, 3 divided by 3 is 1. And what do you notice? We notice that these two binomials are the same. Binomial meaning you have two terms there. All right. And that is what you should get. If your binomials are not the same, they have to have the same sign as well as the same terms. Then if they're not the same, you've done something incorrectly, go back and check your factors. Go back and check your signs as well. So these should be the same. My last step, I'm going to take my outside terms, so 2x plus 3, and write that as one binomial. All right. And then I'm just going to factor out one of my binomials here of x plus 1. So you can say I can bring down one binomial, or if we look at these as one set of terms, you can say I can factor out x plus 1. But either way, you're only bringing down one of those binomials, and your other binomial are your outside terms there. And so I have factored this trinomial using the AC method. All right, so let's try another one right here. So we're going to factor using the same method. All right, so again, first up, multiply A times C. So that would be 5 times 6. I get 30. I want to find factors of 30 that give me negative 17. And it's negative 17 because I have a minus 17. So same thing. So A times C is 30. I want to find factors of 30 that have a sum of negative 17. And you can kind of brainstorm here. First thing comes to mind, negative 6 times negative 5. When you add them, you get negative 11. That does not work. All right. Then 15 and 2, right? But both have to be negative because when you multiply two negatives, you get a positive number. But when you add two negatives, you get a negative. So negative 15 and negative 2, when I multiply it, I get a positive 30. But when I add them, I do in fact get a negative 17. So keep in mind that when your result is positive and your B is negative, your two factors are going to be negative because that's the only way that you can multiply and get a positive number and add and get negative numbers. All right. So my factors I'm going to use are negative 15 and negative 2. I'm going to replace it with negative 17m. So instead of putting negative 17m, I put negative 15m. I'm using m because that's the variable I'm given. Minus 2m because they're negative. And then I bring down my 6. So bring down that first and last term and replace those middle two terms with your original b. And again, when you combine them, you should get your original b. All right. And then I just group them. All right. So I could factor out a 5m. 5m. Dividing those two, I'm just left with the m. I took away the 5 and the m. And then negative 15m divided by 5m, that would be a negative 3. So if you need to go back and check, 5m times m gives me 5m squared. 5m times negative 3 gives me negative 15m. All right, so I factor that one correctly. Now, if you notice here, I can factor out a 2, right? If I just factor out a 2, I'm going to be left with a negative m right here. I want a positive m. So since I want a positive m, I'm going to factor out a negative 2. So negative 2m divided by negative 2 would just leave me with a m. All right. And then 6 divided by negative 2 gives me negative 3. All right. Because I want these two expressions, or these two binomials, to match up. All right. So now last up, my outside terms here, 5m and negative 2. So 5m minus 2. I put a minus because it's a negative. All right. And then I bring down one of my binomials, or factor out one. And there you have it. You have factored this trinomial using the AC method. All right, so we're going to do one more problem together. All right, and then the last problem I want you to try on your own. So last problem we're going to do together. Let's factor this trinomial here. 6 times negative 4. I get negative 24. Factors of negative 24 that equal negative 5. And so my factors, 8 and 3, okay? Because I know that I can get a negative 5 from 8 and 3. The 8 has to be negative, right? Because when I add them, I want to get negative 5. All right, so The 3 could not be negative because when I add it, I will get a positive 5. So I have to use negative 8 and positive 3. All right. Now I'm just going to replace these. 6y squared minus 8y plus 3y minus 4. Bringing down my first and last terms. All right. I could factor out a 2y. Well, let me group. All right. I can factor out a 2y. 6 divided by 2 is 3. I take away one of the y's because y squared divided by y is just y. Negative 8y divided by 2y is just negative 4. All right. What do we notice here? Well, first, with this binomial, there's nothing we can factor out other than 1. And we notice that these are already the same, right? So when you have your binomials that are already the same, and plus we know that we can't factor out anything else except 1. So when they are the same already, okay, go ahead and just factor out a 1 because 1 times anything is just that term or that number, all right? So my result, 2y plus 1 times 3y minus 4. And I have factored this trinomial, all right? And the next problem you're going to try on your own. All right, so this is the problem I like for you to try on your own. 12x squared plus 11x minus 5. So go ahead and pause the video and try to see if you can factor this trinomial on your own. Okay, so hopefully you got it correct. You should have gotten 3x minus 1 times 4x plus 5, or vice versa. If your binomials are flipped, that is okay. So hopefully you got this correct and you understand how to factor trinomials using the AC method now. All right. Thank you for learning with me.